Welcome to I'm Your Target Demographic. I'm Adam Ryan Daniels, and today we are talking a spoiler-free review for Jessica Jones. So I finished binging the show. It's only 13 episodes, so some of you might also be caught up. But today we're just going to talk about the general goods, bads, is it worth watching, stuff like that. And then if you want all the details, once you finish the show, I'll have a spoiler review probably up tomorrow. So come back and check that out. So, in general, Jessica Jones is a Netflix exclusive TV show set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that focuses on a former superhero named Jessica Jones, and she now runs a private investigation firm, I guess. She's a private investigator. And basically, she tries to help people, but she's not especially helpful. Like, she's kind of mean, she's kind of sarcastic. She doesn't really care about a lot in this world, which makes her really interesting but not always likable. So in the first couple episodes, we see her cross paths with someone that has been victim of a villain from Jessica Jones' past. And basically the whole series it takes a couple episodes for us to meet this villain, and then we slowly get little reveals about what has happened to Jessica and why this villain is so terrible. And this really goes to some dark places. And this is by far the most adult thing that Marvel Studios has ever created. That when you think of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you think of Iron Man and Captain America, and those Avengers movies, they're not going to put a lot of profanity. Right there, they're not going to. There's not going to be a lot of blood. They're not going to do those things. But in Daredevil, we saw, wow, this is really violent. But here, it's not so much violence, but it's more the sex and profanity. That if you're not into that or feel uncomfortable watching that, this might be a tough show for you. But it gives a really interesting look at that part of the world. Like, what is the real life of someone living in Hell's Kitchen like? And that might include, some sex scenes and some profanity and a lot of language. And there's some really uncomfortable topics that, if you're not expecting that, it might really hit you from left field. But I thoroughly enjoyed it and thought it was a really refreshing look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And most of the reason that this succeeds is because of the villain. And that's David Tennant, known as the 10th Doctor from Doctor Who. And he plays a villain named Kilgrave, which is the most villainous name you could think of. And Kilgrave has the ability to convince people to do anything. He just says what he wants them to do and they have to do it. So imagine anything he wants, he tells someone to go get it. He tells someone to kill themselves. He does all sort of horrible, nasty, dark things. And this might be the most evil villain that we've ever seen from Marvel. Even villains like Loki, sure, they're trying to kill people, they're trying to destroy the world, but they don't feel, at their core, evil. But this guy, he is just horrible and disgusting, and an excellent performance from David Tennant, who was so lovable and likable in Doctor Who, that this is a complete shift. And it works, and it's up there with Kingpin. They're great in very different ways, because Kingpin was so sympathetic that you kind of understand why he's doing this, but Kilgrave is so evil, and it just seeps through the screen, and it's a great performance. Just hands down, the most evil villain we've seen from Marvel yet. Another thing you need to know before going into Jessica Jones is that it's not always action-packed. Daredevil had a lot of action, there was a lot of fighting, because that's what he did. But Jessica Jones, when the villain isn't a fighter, he's a talker. So there's going to be a lot of talking, there's going to be a lot of discovering, kind of crime detection, trying to figure out what's going on. It's not a lot of fighting. There are a few, and they're awesome, especially involving Luke Cage. There's one scene in a bar. It involves Luke Cage, and if you don't know anything about the comics, Luke Cage has unbreakable skin. And so someone jabs him with a beer bottle, and it just breaks. And those fight scenes were incredible and make me really excited for Luke Cage, the TV show, which is coming up next year. But Jessica Jones, even though she's superpowered, doesn't do a lot of fighting, but when she does, it's awesome, it looks great. There is a fight scene towards the end of the series, which I'll talk about in my spoiler video, that is just awesome, but it's not as frequent as Daredevil, where he was fighting ninjas every episode. So just know that going in. This is a little slow. I wouldn't say it's boring. There's a lot of people out there saying how boring the show is. I would just say it's a slow burn. It takes time because there's a lot of talking and a lot of revelations about how do you fight someone that can tell you to kill yourself. Like, how do you even start to handle that? And a lot of this is her overcoming her inner demons and getting over this, and it's just a slow burn. But if you're able to sit and watch this all unfold, it's a spectacular journey. But if you feel like you're getting bored, or you feel like you will get bored, Jessica Jones may not do it for you. That it is really a talky show with the occasional really cool action moment, but some of you might just not have the tolerance to sit through it. So that's a valid criticism for those of you that found that complaint. Another thing you might need to know going in is that this doesn't really tie to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, kind of the same way Daredevil didn't. There were little nods, little references, but you don't need to know anything. You don't even need to know Daredevil. That you don't need to know anything before you see Jessica Jones. You can just go in cold, it tells you everything you need to know, but it does give you little moments that you might appreciate more if you know those other things. Especially Daredevil and the Avengers. Like, you don't really need to know about Iron Man or whatever. Like, they mention little things, but you don't need to know any of that. So that makes this easy and accessible for you just to hop right into. So that's basically all I'm going to say here, is I liked it. It's a little slow, and some of you might not like that. It's also not very action-packed. Some of you might not like that. But as a character study, watching Jessica and Kilgrave, these are two very compelling characters. The supporting characters are all great. The talent is incredible. There's a couple annoying characters. They're not around too much. You don't really need to worry about it. But it's a spectacular show. I don't think it's as good as Daredevil. Not just because the action. Daredevil felt a little tighter. It felt a little more interesting. So I'm going to go 4 out of 5 for Jessica Jones. But it is definitely worth watching, especially if you find yourself interested in how this might play out. Then you need to watch this. So stay right here. Tomorrow I'm going to put up a video talking about all the spoilers. So if you haven't finished binging Jessica Jones, do that now and I'll put out that video tomorrow. Thanks for watching.